Okay, now it's being recorded. So we're recording it for people who could not make it here today, and we'll upload it to our YouTube channel. So it's only my videos that should be recorded, but your videos, if you speak, might be recorded. So if you don't want your videos to be recorded, switch them off. But if you're okay, keep them on. So this event is organized by Psychology at Work. So we have Simon, Hardy, David, and myself. And now we have 2 new joiners, which will be announced next week, which is very exciting. So it should be 4 of us plus 2. So we also created Psych Talent hashtag, and Psych Talent for any OxPsych jobs out there on LinkedIn. If you see any which are not tagged, please tag them and follow this tag as well. Because what's really exciting with this is that you can sort it by recent on LinkedIn. Because if you just follow a hashtag, it pops up the most popular post to the top, which might be like from ages ago, but just because they had most likes and comments. But if you click at the top, it has sort, and you can click recent, and it will update all the recent jobs. And we're literally posting, because of volunteers and other people who tag, we're posting about 7 or 8 OxPsych jobs a day. There's even 3 graduate schemes right now. One with psychological consultancy, one with Aon, and one with somebody else who can't remember. But the fact is that if you told me when I was a master's student, there would be any time would you have 3 graduate schemes specifically for OxPsychs, I was just going, that's nuts, because you'd desperately be trying to find one. But we created that, and it's quite fun, so please do follow. So a little bit about me, so a little bit of narcissism. So done a whole bunch of work. So I specialize mainly in one-to-ones, qualified hundreds of people in psychometrics, qualified about a dozen of them, worked for 3 publishers, and I'm so obsessed with psychometrics, I profiled my wife to be with 2 psychometrics before proposing. Because living it to one instrument is purely irresponsible, if you ask me, for such high consequence decisions. And then I'm obsessed with this stuff because in psychology, it's wonderful if you are. And I do all sorts of stuff from teams, coaching, couples, office design. And my favorite thing is about facilitating collective intelligence and sharing the goodness of psychology. So the key thing is here is that in psychology, especially OxPsych, you can make a profession as unique as you are and the job as unique as you are. And it took me ages to realize that your MSc does not provide you with clarity of actually what to do next, but it provides you with a fantastic toolkit you can use later for whatever you're doing. So yeah, it's a brilliant toolkit in itself. Yeah, so also a lot of other stuff, because why not? And random shenanigans. But to be honest, even though I'm doing all of this, this is pretty much me until I was 35 in OxPsych. I had no idea what I was doing. And perpetually kind of lost and seeing what kind of comes up. But now I literally could not think of a better place to be and doing what I love. But not knowing what I do was also part of it. So if you're an MSc or an undergrad or have graduated and several years in, it's perfectly okay to not know what you're doing. Well, I only have a sample size of 1. But that's enough about me. What about you? So if you can go to menti.com and type in 94376786. That number again is 94376786. And you can just tell us your background in OxPsych. Are you already working in OxPsych? Are you a graduate student or OxPsych? What is that? What is that sort of magic? Oh, excellent. We have students and graduates. Would some of the students mind unmuting themselves and just telling us a little bit about what they're studying and how they're finding it?
Hi, Nikita.
Hello there.
It's Abigail.
Hey, Abby.
I like to wait a little bit to see if anybody else wants to talk, because I know I can talk for England. So I try and stay a little bit quiet. I'm studying OxPsych at Northumbria University. I've just come off the back of doing my undergrad, but I came to university later in life. So I've already got quite a bit of work experience in different fields, never knowing what I wanted to do. And then speaking to my tutor and telling her what I was interested in, she opened my eyes to this whole new world of OxPsych. Initially, I was like, why would I want to do business psychology? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But the more I've got into it and the more I've understood the psychology and the organizational psychology and my past experience through work, I'm like, this is like literally where I'm destined to be. And I think in doing these networking sessions, it's really helping, and especially Nikita, with when you're showing that not all job titles have the word OxPsych in them, and that they can be quite varied. And I was speaking with Ingrid about how we can understand how to apply what we know to any job, and not specifically ones that have OxPsych in them. But this is going to be a really interesting session to kind of know maybe how to filter a little bit to get the most out of what we're learning, I suppose.
Absolutely. So how to actually get the most value out of what you're paying your time and money for.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll definitely try to address that. And I'm also just curious to hear, we have 5 people who are working in OxPsych. Could you just unmute yourself and share what sort of shenanigans you're doing in this wonderful field of ours?
Hi, I'm Katie. I've been sort of working in the field actually of learning and development for the last 20 years, but I'm actually currently a second-year student part-time on an OxPsych Masters. And it's only since doing that, it's made me realise that I've actually been doing this job for the last 20 years, because actually there's a huge overlap. So I was originally in the regular army, and I'm now an army reservist. So I'm doing learning development part-time around doing the Masters. And what it's made me realise is actually the consultancy cycle of learning needs analysis is actually relevant to so many other areas. And when I've sort of been going through my Masters, you kind of think, actually, it's not rocket science, it's just a process. And the learning side, when you go into an organisation and look at their learning need, actually that's what you're doing as an OxPsych, whether you're looking at well-being or organisational structures, you're just pulling on different bits of information. So I've kind of been doing lots of those and have the opportunity in the army to actually do all sorts of projects that are out of the learning and development field as well. So that's quite interesting. So if anyone's considering joining the Army Reserves or regulars or anything and wants to know anything, then get hold of me on LinkedIn and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Oh, that's wonderful. Katie, would you just mind then popping your name into the chat so people can contact you via LinkedIn? And
yeah, sure.
And that's another, just going back to Abigail's point, that's one of the best ways to make use out of what you're learning is to talk to people already doing it. And the beauty is, because the jobs can be so niche, that let's say it's middle of the night and all of a sudden you became interested in selection of firefighters. It might happen. You might think, what sort of situational judgment tests they have for firefighters? And you can literally go to LinkedIn and you can type in psychometric profiling of firefighters. And there's somebody in the world with the title of an occupational psychologist who made a living out of doing exactly that. And you can just reach out to them and say, hi, Janet, I noticed you do selection of firefighters and I find it fascinating. Make sure you write something from their profile, which shows you actually read it. And this common ground. And I was like, do you have any advice or any books or any materials on this subject? Or would you be free for a quick chat to discuss? And you can build up your network so quickly, because LinkedIn wasn't there when I did my MSc. And right now, I just find it like a great luxury. You can read an article, you can find the author of this article, you can write them a message, and sometimes within 5 minutes they reply. And I just find it mind-boggling that you connect with academics like that. And you can also connect with anybody in the field, you know, if you find aviation psychology interesting, etc. Because the thing is that quite often on your degree, you'll be the only one who finds something interesting. And you look around and you go, nobody else finds this interesting, so I'm going to pass it. But actually, what's worth it is search out somebody who already does that in the field and talk to them. You might be surprised of how interesting it is. And if you really want to turn it up a notch, at the end of that conversation, ask them if they know anybody you should talk to in this field. So this will give you access to their network. And that can be really interesting. And building up this kind of a wider network can be some of the best things you do for looking for work, because A, you get to see how it is. B, you get to actually make a connection. And C, if they hear of any entry jobs and they know you're interested in this field, they're likely to pass it along to you. So it might be one of the best sources for potential jobs. And it doesn't cost you anything either to do this networking. And the beautiful thing is, so many students don't do this. So if you do this, that would really separate you from everybody else in the eyes of this potential employer and colleague and all of that jazz, because it shows initiative and it shows you care and you're willing to go out there to search for it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Oh, thank you for that confirmation, good sir. And yeah, would anybody else like to come in and just say, are they a graduate student or working in Oxide?
I'm happy to kind of talk a little bit about what I do, if that's okay.
Brilliant.
I am currently a forensic psychologist, so I apologise that I found a different light before I found Oxide. So I'm currently heading up a service, and I've always been interested in occupational psychology. Did my master's almost like a decade ago, really, and then kind of thought, what am I doing? Why don't I just take this as a career? Apologies if you hear noise in the background. It's my daughter's computer game that she's playing on. But yeah, so I'm currently kind of sort of working full-time with leading a forensic service and dealing with social care in a pandemic and things like that, whilst trying to do my doctorate as well in Oxide.
Excellent. So what from forensic led you to Oxide? Just really curious.
To be honest, there's so much crossover. There's absolutely a huge amount, which you'd be surprised by. And I think for me, what I find really, really interesting is working in a closed culture, such as a prison or a secure service, where, you know, it's not something that anybody can sort of really understand until you're truly in it. I think for me, working in those sort of settings and seeing the impact that that has on staff has made me really want to become a bit of an advocate for, actually, we need to support our staff, we need to protect our staff and make sure that staff feel psychologically safe as well as physically safe in often what is quite dangerous settings, really.
Fascinating. And
a lot of similarity. I think you'd be surprised by how much we do even some of the sort of competencies and things like that we do as well when we're doing our training. So I think that shows that there's a real overlap with that regard for other people from a workspace perspective.
Liz, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the key thing is that sometimes we get so caught up with being, let's say, occupational, forensic, or clinical, or educational, that we forget the common ground of psychology.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I absolutely love, is to work with psychologists from other disciplines. Like, I have a few clinical psychologists. By the way, a clinical drinking buddy is probably one of the best investments you can make. So puts everything into perspective. And forensic psychology, so don't hesitate to reach out with people in different psychology branches, because it's psychology branches because we're part of the same tree. And sometimes I feel we might forget that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And Liz, did you pop your name down if anybody wants to reach out to you and learn more
in
about
there,
forensic
yeah,
psychology?
I'll resubmit it just in case anybody's interested in linking up. Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. So, good people, we'll do a couple of more slides and then we'll have another breakout rooms. We'll probably have like 2 or 3 this evening, so you can meet each other. So, just curious, where are you based right now?
Καλή ερώτηση τι κάνω. Κάθομαι και βλέπω κάποιον Nikita Mikhailov.
Okay, so if you can just type in Menti, where are you currently based? London town, Dublin. Gotta love it. South Africa, Nottingham, getting some distribution. Derby, Basingstoke, lovely place. Excellent. Leeds, haven't been there in ages. Well, you can always pair up with the person from West Yorkshire. Great. So we have people from South Africa. It looks like it's quite UK based. So we'll keep it as far as job search places and stuff like that, a little bit closer to UK, but also mentioned South Africa. Lovely. So considering where you're based right now and what you're doing right now, so be it a student or a graduate, what is the biggest challenge for you right now? Just generally, as far as when it comes to looking for jobs in OxPsych or pursuing a career in OxPsych, just anything comes to mind.
So that's something that I talked with you at an earlier stage, Nikita, if you remember. I think that's most people struggle with, which is the experience.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the experience is a little bit of a problem. Whereas somebody put it experience. Yes. But what particular issues you have with gaining experience?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's I talked to my room earlier, and it's really the process of trying to get experience, but not wanting to go for our internship because I do have bills to pay, and I do want to start with a job instead of, you know, volunteering or something else. So I'm stuck with my university experience and trying to build it as I go to the jobs that I'm currently doing. Or direct in-work experience on psychometrics, for example, I cannot get that unless I work in psychometrics. Or I cannot get into psychometrics without the experience, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Though there is quite a lot of entry roles into psychometrics, especially from the analytical perspective. I know PSI is looking for 2 entry roles right now. They just posted a couple today. You also have Aon is currently looking for a graduate in psychometrics. And you also have the psychology consulting, PCL, looking for a graduate scheme starting now. All of them don't require any previous experience based in psychometrics. Are you looking now, or are you graduating in the autumn?
No, I've already graduated in December. So I am considered a fresh graduate.
Excellent. So check out PCL, check out PSI, gotta love all those acronyms and stuff, because that's brilliant. And most importantly, reach out to people working in psychometrics and consultancies and just connect and have chats, because some of the jobs might be advertised internally. Because especially for early talent roles, only bigger companies can advertise because of the amount of applicants. Because then most of the applicants will start with a cover letter, "I'm passionate about psychology." And
I've heard that before, that not all of the employers go the mile and post the job. So they are looking for graduates to find out about them instead of advertising.
Well, yes, it's a self-selecting sample. And
yes,
300 applicants and you're a 3-person band. You just don't have the bandwidth to look at 300 applicants while still keeping the lights on and doing work. So they're more likely to look around. But if you're interested in psychometrics, I mean, just check out, for example, Arctic Shore hires junior talent quite a bit. LHH hires junior talent. Well, PSI, of course. PCL has their graduate schemes. They actually have a graduate program for people interested in psychometrics or psychs. Who else hires? Stantan sometimes hires early talent, so that's Ben Williams, his joint establishment. Very nice place to be. What else? Who else? Oh, geez. PANA probably as well, but it's more of a consulting. And of course, the Myers-Briggs company based in Oxford. That's also a place to be. Corn Ferry also offer early talents, and they work a lot in psychometrics. So there's definitely a lot of places to be. So I would just write to people and connect in those companies just to say, would you have a chat to see how it works in practice?
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Oh, that's right.
Taking some notes of the names that you mentioned. So.
Oh, and we're going to have a complete psychometric geek out on the 26th of March. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be called "What the Bleep Are We Measuring About Personality?" I'm quite proud of that title, joint effort. And we're going to have, you know, people who are like head of data and head of psychometrics of IBM. We're going to have head of science of Arctic Shores. we're going to have founder of Lumina Learning, and we're going to have somebody from DDI US. And we're all going to be talking about actually what do psychometrics measure. It's going to be 26th of March, 1 p.m., the same Zoom link you are now on, because all our events are on the Zoom link. So you don't need to register, you can just show up. And that promises to be like a super geek out. If you're gonna look for a super networking event to get into psychometrics, that's gonna be it. Yeah, we even had a meeting yesterday. Remember that random call that went in for 2 hours? That was preparing for that 26 with the speakers. So it's promising to be a fascinating event. Right, so, but thank you for sharing. And look, if you have any, oh, also 3 Minute Mile hires junior talent and they work in psychometrics. So I would check those people out. Okay, so, and as far as experience, we are working on this. So with Psychology at Work, we'll be trying to get companies to offer more placements. And you're right, because internships, man, if the company is making money on your efforts, you should be paid, as far as I'm concerned. But maybe we can encourage companies to offer placements to graduates. And this is what we're currently working on, because that would be wonderful. Oh, and the work psychology group offers experience as well. They have experience in OCPSych, work experience. And also, who else? Zircon Consultancy and B Talent. So Amanda Potter's establishment. They also offer early talent and consulting. Damn it, there's so many. So that's encouraging, but I probably should write them down.
And work experience, Nikita.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Zircon B Talent also offers work experience. So if you just want to go be with them for 2 weeks or 1 day a week for 4 weeks, they do that as well.
thank you, Aneta. Yeah, and just reach out to people. But my main advice, don't reach out to consultants saying, do you have any work experience? I really want some. Reach out and have a chat first, because they need to see that you actually want this, because you might not believe it, but not everybody's interested in psychometrics. I know it's weird, but hey, and the key thing is that what they're interested in is to see that motivation. It's like Wendy Lord, who hired me for Hographer, my first real job in psychometrics. When we went at the end of the phone interview, she said, you seem to have none of the right experience, but you seem to have the right attitude, so we'll give you a try. And they just want to see that you care about psychometrics and assessment and best practice and this particular field, because that's what's going to come out in, be it client management or research. It's a very geeky industry. And also, if you want to check out the Psychometrics Forum, it's the most geeky establishment of psychometricians ever. And they do some interesting events and networking, and they have a good LinkedIn group. And by the way, LinkedIn groups are brilliant sources, because if you go to a LinkedIn group, like usually it's just full of marketing rubbish, but that's not the point. The point, if you join it, you can go to members and you can contact the members, even if you're not connected with them directly. So you can send messages. So you can, because the beauty is, if you join a place like Psychometrics Forum, it's quite niche and high statistical likelihood people on that group are interested in psychometrics like you. So you can contact them and just say, look, I'm just interested in how it applies in real world. Would you have any pointers? I mean, cold LinkedIn messages don't work. Like, I'm a graduate looking for a job. Do you know any? But people love to be seen for the individuals they are. We all do that. So if your message reflects that you read their profile, that you share their interest in psychometrics, that people would love to talk to you, because people love to talk about themselves. So that's why we have a profession and other variables as well. And you'll be giving them a time to reflect on their career. If you hire an agreeableness, you can frame it that you're doing it for them because you give them time to reflect and you appreciate their journey. So, hey, everybody wins. See, beauty of framing. Right. So what do you find most interesting psychology on that note? So at least one of you finds psychometrics interesting, but what are your interests? So if you can just type it into our little Mentimeter there, or feel free to unmute yourself. Making a positive change, diversity, psychometrics, recruitment. Sociopath, psychopath, escalated quickly. How about recruitment of psychopath and their development? Psychopaths need development too. It's cool. Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks that. Personality, yay! Diversity. Would any of you like to unmute yourself and share with us what you're interested in? Otherwise, you just get me talking at you, which I don't mind, but there might be better ways.
Hi there. I'm Carrie. I'm a student at Birkbeck.
Hi, Carrie.
And hello. I joined this whole crazy thing that we call org psych because I'm super interested in the way that people learn, and particularly how they learn in structured groups, right? Because there's a whole difference about how human beings will learn according to social groups or, you know, mom to child or what have you. And I find the chaos that like organizational learning is, and the mystery that it is, to be truly fascinating for some unknown reason. And my friends all think I'm bizarre, but that's why I'm here. So that's me. I'll go
Don't
back
worry.
on.
Being seen bizarre by your friends is absolutely a badge of honor if you're a psychologist. Like even being seen bizarre by your clients as well, because I'm a freelance consultant and my clients don't hire me because I'm an organizational citizen, because they have plenty of those. They hire me for my quirkiness. If you get called mad, that's too much, but quirky or, you know, that's okay. So being a little bit strange can actually be your key USP.
Well, it's been working for me so far. I mean, I'm a former professional actor who then used to sell booze for a living, and then COVID hit. So I needed something to do that wasn't volatile to a virus. So I was like, let's go and focus on training, which I've been doing for like 20 years. So I've always been a bit odd. It's always been a bit, it's been working.
So you went from an actor selling booze to an psych.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Well, let's see. I mean, I'm still a student. Maybe this org psych thing, we don't know. We'll see how it goes after October when my dissertation goes in.
But you know what? We're all just a bunch of alcoholics with a psychology problem at the end of the day.
Well, then I am your best drinking buddy, because not only am I a drunk, I know the best stuff to drink it.
That's called a drunk with good taste.
Yeah. That's me. On a champagne taste on beer budget, really.
Nice. So thrifty. So yeah, by the way, I always say an introvert is an extrovert with good taste, also works quite well. But considering we have so much interesting diversity of thought and ideas, what I suggest is let's more breakout rooms. So 5-minute breakout room. So I'm gonna recreate them. Recreate, so you get some more random people, and just 5 minutes, just discuss what you're interested in psych and what brought you into this field. And then I'll see you all back in 5.
Put it up. So if it's opportune, you know, let me know and I'll show you the link.
Sure, that's also quite exciting as far as a novel way to approach on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And it didn't cost too much, because I asked him how did you do it, because it's got these like pictures and things like this, and he broke it all down for me.
Nice. He gave you a cost-benefit analysis and return on investment. So,
yeah, really conscientiousness.
I know, and creativity as well. So
Okay.
how was these breakout rooms and sharing what you love about psych and what you find most interesting? How was that?
It wasn't long enough.
Wasn't long enough.
We were just away.
No.
Well, really? Well, that's a good start. So apart from not being in long enough, so we'll make it longer next time, 10 minutes. Thank you for the feedback. How was it otherwise?
It was interesting hearing what other people were interested in, and it just shows like how broad the field really is.
In our group, we had people doing dissertations. So as someone who works in a university who supervises dissertations, I think they're one of the greatest things you can do at university is to do a research project and try and strive to do something original and combine some areas of OP together in an original way. So it was interesting hearing about a couple of people's dissertation projects in OP.
Indeed, and combinations, like for example, mine was on trust gradient between first officer and captain of airliners. That was kind of fun.
Of course,
But was
no, I was just going to say, of course, the extra part of this conversation now is, are you incorporating the COVID context in some way in terms of the implications for your topic, you know? So some people don't. They're going to do their dissertation as a general topic regardless, but other people feel there's a very powerful link with COVID and how that's affecting the area in OP in the context that it's been creating.
Absolutely. So there's also an opportunity now to write in the history books of effect of COVID on people's well-being or whatever else, because it's all being impacted.
It's interesting the different opinions on this, because some people are like, we don't want everybody doing projects on COVID just for the sake of it at the same time. But then on the other hand, it's kind of hard to ignore depending on the topic that you're looking at and the constraints of doing research. So I think you know, we're going to see whole waves of stuff relating to COVID in academic journals, and things are going to keep going for a while. But then there'll be other topics that will, I think, press on regardless and will continue to be fundamental beyond COVID as well.
Well, you can start with COVID and then see, oh, you know, people work from home. So that would be an interesting thing to see. So it's not really on COVID or about COVID. It might be the cause and effect sort of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe you compile everything. Some journal, some publisher should start something like Journal of COVID Studies.
Oh gosh.
Put it in.
That's really
That would be the biggest
field.
volume.
Would be short-lived.
Yeah.
You never know. So
yeah, maybe a special issue, but I don't know about an entire journal. It wouldn't be very. It might be quite depressing reading as well. But I mean, you know, each to their own.
Anyway, most papers are now filled with that. It's I was reviewing 2 papers. They were kind of, it's crazy. They wanted to put it into COVID context, though the topic was not related to that at all. So it was like I put in one of the comments, like, why do you want to connect it with COVID? Like, what is specific about COVID and the situation that you are studying? It's like people are trying to kind of fit in COVID into everything.
I don't think they should. I don't think they should always do that. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of people who've collected data before COVID as well, and they've got loads of data lying around. And it's
in fact, in the paper that I was reviewing, it was the case. They collected data before COVID.
Yeah,
so
and they're just desperately trying to make it relevant, I guess. But
yeah, that is pretty desperate if you collected the data before COVID and then you want to try to make it COVID relevant. But check this out. You get a group of psychologists in the room, and we already came out with a publication, or at least a special issue of COVID articles, because that's how we get down, good people. And I hope you find this interesting, because that's quite self-selecting. So, good people, what is your dream role? I'm just really curious. In Occ Psych, what would be your perfect job? How you see it right now? Consultant.
Hang on, I've actually log on to this. 6, 7, 8, 6.
All right. Oh, yes. So it's menti.com 9437 6786. Leadership consultant. Consulting. Aviation psychology, you gotta love it. Aviation psychs are quite interesting. But boy, the European aviation psychologists can drink, man. Their conferences are quite a lot of partying, which you wouldn't think from aviation psychologists, but hey. And an internal organization psychologist within an organization. Perfect. Human-centered change consultant. Would anybody like to unmute and share what would be their perfect role? Huh? Come on.
I'll just go on.
Why not?
Contrary to popular belief, most people go for consultancies, but that's something I want to avoid. So I'm the person who wrote, I want to be an internal organizational psychologist in an organization. And I believe that's going to be much more fun and more paying attention to the company's, culture and values and everything, and make sure that I can identify myself as, an employee in that organization. So I would like to start as internal organizational psychologist, and whether I'm working in psychometrics or organizational change or recruitment or organizational resilience, there's lots of things I can do. Well, I'm not set in stone about what I want to do. There's lots of interests, but whichever comes first.
Yeah, so for internal roles, there's always L&D, HR, and also org psych positions, especially in recruitment and psychometrics, because if a company is big enough, they would usually have an internal psychometric department of org psychs. They're usually the gatekeepers. So if a new psychometric comes into organization, sooner or later you'll find them, and they will kind of look into it. So if you look in for example, heads of assessment roles, people in organizations, and just reach out to them for a chat. Or, assessment VP. Usually they have a word assessment in their job title, which makes it easier to look for them, rather than org psych or talent. Talent, just looking for a company, let's say if you're interested in a particular company, and just type in talent or assessment or head of assessment and that company name on LinkedIn, and just reach out to people already in those companies.
Yes, and that's most of the time it's integrated within HR. So again, I think the big chasm is between HR and consultancies, whether one decides to find a job as an organizational psychologist.
Yes, it can be challenging, and a lot of consultancies have graduate schemes for IOs, but not a lot of companies do. But if you can sign up for a graduate scheme of big corporates, sometimes you will be lucky and you will get into an IO department, but there's no guarantees, which can be a bit problematic. Okay, but I wish you good luck getting in there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing. Anybody else wants to share?
Hi, Nikita.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out exactly where I'd want to specialize as such. I know that I want to kind of move into a consulting role and just work across kind of different projects. But it's just trying to kind of get into a bit more of a generalist type position and work it out. That's where I'm kind of at the moment to figure that out.
Oh, there's definitely a lot of generalists. Most consultancies are generalist as well. So especially if you work for big management consultancies, it's more generalist than, let's say, a niche psychometric publisher. Wonderful. So there's definitely a lot of titles out there. But my only word of advice here is be careful of perfect roles. Because, for example, there was one time when I graduated and given my thesis on pilots, I applied for an airline for a role in assessment, junior role, entry-level role with a particular airline. And I didn't get it. It was a last stage selection process. I filled out an application form with such huge security checks that I had to dig out paperwork from 5 years back. And then I did aced the psychometrics, got 90th percentile and above on all ability tests, but it took me 2 hours. And then I was drained and they had no break and I was taken to an interview. And when they asked me to describe the difference between reliability and validity to a layperson, I couldn't think of a better example than correlations with schizophrenia and women wearing high heel shoes. Long story short, didn't get the job, but I got best feedback on the application and my interview to help me get the next job. So always ask for feedback. But what was really fun is a couple of years later, I was in a pretty good job at Hographa. I was really enjoying myself at the DOP conference at the dinner table. And I'm chatting to a person next to me and I quickly realized she got the job in that airline. And I go, it must be the best job in the world. You must be flying all over the world, assessing pilots. It's so exciting, picking out different psychometrics, creating test batteries. And she's just progressively looks at me as I'm insane. I get this often. And then she goes, whatever gave you that idea? I profile middle management. They don't let me near pilots and I cannot choose my assessments. And I realized the job I cried into the pillow for never existed. I imagined what this job was going to look like. And when I got the rejection letter, I cried because I lost the vision of a perfect job. But that job was never real. And And I actually ended up in a much better position as a result of this, looking back, and I couldn't have ended up in a better one. So
I'm not sure if that sounds like something that you did wrong or whether the description was deceiving and that was on purpose to try to attract people.
I have a rubbish attention to detail. I probably didn't read the description, man. That's probably my fault, my human factors error. But you always sometimes likely to think it's better than it is. So whenever you get a rejection letter, don't worry, maybe you dodged the bullet. Right. So what would you like some help with? Because with Psychology at Work, we're always looking how we can help people and what sort of things we can do, what sort of events we can do, what sort of material we can publish. What would be helpful to you right now? Whatever you're currently facing or what you're interested in or would like to know more. You can just pop some ideas down and then we can networking. Great. Well, we're already almost finished. So after this, there's going to be like an hour of networking and drinks if you have any. So there's going to be plenty of that and more than 5 minutes to share your passions about OxPsych. Link in OP and HR. That could be a good event. Crafting roles internally, so a bit of job crafting, mentoring. Well, I'm happy to say the emerging OxPsych mentoring program is going strong. So we have 100 pairings for our first cohort, and we'll be soon opening up new applications for September. So we will be starting the new cohort for OxPsychs. And the idea is that if you want a mentor, we'll get you one. And we had 100% match rate. So everybody who wanted a mentor got one when we opened up the program. Work placement, CVs, CV gaps. Well, yeah, CV gaps can be an issue, but it depends how you frame them. So maybe we'll do an event on CV writing. Anything else? Or feel free to unmute yourself and just share with us.
I just thought I'll say this rather than write it. I think for me, it's looking at the skills that I have. I already have the OxPsych masters, but I also have some other skills and trying to see what role would fit my qualifications and skills. Again, I kind of, in my head, I think I know what it is, but I'm not sure.
Well, so you had some experience before you went into OxPsych?
Not in OxPsych. So I've kind of jumped around from different areas. So my degree was sociology with psychology. Then I trained to be a social worker, did a master's in social work. And then I came into OxPsych. And then my job now is in performance management, planning and performance. I just seem to jump. Whereas I'm trying to see, can I consolidate what I have done into one role?
So consolidation and building on other experience in OxPsych.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, that makes sense because what I found in masters, it doesn't differentiate if you had experience before or you're fresh from a BSc. So it doesn't necessarily value so much experience you have gained before in your life. And it's almost kind of you start from zero.
Okay, yeah.
So then the question becomes how you can integrate the previous experience and your transferable skills. As I'm sure from being a social worker and your degree, you have a lot of skills which are really useful, be it in consulting or internal or application of the OxPsych in any format. So it's how you can kind of underline the importance of them.
Yeah. And I just had a question. You mentioned coaching, that it will be back out in September. How, where do you announce that? This is my first time joining.
So we have a website called psychologyatwork.blog.
Okay.
I have a related question to the one that was just asked. I'm coming from a consulting background, about 15 years experience working across kind of HR, culture change, ethical business conduct, and running kind of behavioral trials in firms. So kind of really in this space, but not as an OxPsych. When I look at kind of positions in like OxPsych consultancies, they're often asking for, you know, either at graduate level, you go in there and or you go in a kind of more senior level, but you then have to have like 5 to 7 years post qualification experience. And I just wonder, is it, as you said there, doesn't matter whether you've got any experience before, you basically start at ground zero. Is that the case? Would I not be able to kind of count any of that experience?
You might feel like you start from zero, but you're not starting from zero. It's just because the MSc doesn't take into account your previous experience and it treats everybody the same. So sometimes you might question yourself on an MSc, did what I do before had any relevant value to this? Or do I start from zero?
Yeah, it's kind of that. It's more that I feel like it's directly applicable, but it's all pre-degree. A bit like one of the other speakers earlier who was like, oh, I've realized like how much I've been doing is actually in this space. So I guess, yeah, it's just that kind of shift and pitching yourself, because you don't seem to, I mean, I kind of get the impression that no one fits in a box in OP and everyone crafts their own path. But I just, yeah, any advice you have about kind of how to go about that really?
So first of all, I would just reach out to people in consultancies. Like EY has a really big consultancy in OxPsych, and they're really friendly and nice people as well. And I would just reach out to them for a chat. So we'll probably have one of them as a speaker actually for our next event. And one of our next events is going to be OxPsych as a second career. All about, because a lot of people are in this situation and they question themselves, but actually if you look from an employer standpoint, actually, it doesn't matter the order of things as much as that you have both.
Right.
And and therefore, it doesn't matter if you gain the experience after or before. And the beauty is that right now in consultancy, you had a lot of consultancies now valuing an OxPsych degree more than ever. I think that OxPsych, though, of course, we get still confused for an occupational therapist most often in UK. People say, I'm an occupational psychologist. You mean like a therapist? Not quite. But companies are having so much more respect for it. Like a lot of people, junior HR talent has an OxPsych degree. A lot of consultants have OxPsych degrees now, working in the change space. So employers now seem to value OxPsych more, from my perspective. And it's really encouraging to see.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's all right. And we will have this event, and we have a couple of speakers who went in from marketing or other areas into OxPsych and made a very successful careers out of it. And they will be just sharing how sometimes in an MSc, you might lose sight of it when you're in an MSc, but it becomes more evident when you start working just how much similarities there was with what you did before. But thank you so much, Helen, for that. And if you need a contact in EY, just reach out to me and I'll connect you with my contact there. And she's absolutely lovely. And they're very often looking for consultants at varying levels of seniority. And quite often I actually found that people who with past experience who have applied for jobs, even if they had 2-3 years experience before an MSc, even if they apply for a junior consultant, sometimes they're offered a senior consultant role because the employer thinks you're up for it. Even they applied for a junior one. I just had a friend to whom it happened and he was pretty chuffed about it. So we will have an event probably in March, April, time flies, all about second career in OxPsych. We'll actually probably make it, so the first Friday of every month is a career centered event, hence today. So probably we'll try to make our next career event, so next first Friday of the month of April, all about OxPsych as a second career. Right. Well, thank you, Helen, for voicing it. If you didn't voice it, it'd probably be more narcissism from me rather than actually something useful for you. And excellent. So anything else would be useful. Potential job role names. We'll make a blog post about that. As far as where to look, if you look at psychologyatwork.blog, we actually have an article, how to best search, blog post, how to best search for OxPsychs roles online. And what sort of titles there might be, but we'll have a specific one on titles. Job opportunities, please follow Psych Talent on LinkedIn. For now, it's, in my opinion, I have not seen anywhere else where you get more job titles in OxPsych a day and job opportunities. Anything else? Feel free to unmute yourself. That we can do for you.
I just have a question. You said you were going to upload this recording on your YouTube channel. What is your YouTube channel called?
psychologyatwork.blog. We're not particularly original.
Okay.
I'll put a link into it a bit later. So currently on our YouTube channel, we have a video by David Biggs, how to become a chartered occupational psychologist. Because B, we have a 5-week personality course. Yes, 5 lectures on personality, starting from history of assessments to use in coaching. And it's recordings, so 1.5 hour sessions. And then we have interview with Peter Saville about his new book, which is just out, called Testing Times. And probably we have some other wonderful randomness. And you'll have this video next week. And we'll be creating more videos and preferably interviews with Ox Psychs, like day in the life and stuff like that. So we actually have 3 people joining us next week to the 4 who are already working on Psychology at Work. So we'll have much more resource and we'll be making more fun stuff. Well, that's the plan, at least. Not sure how much conscientiousness we have between the 7 of us to implement it. So any other questions at this point?
Nikita, I've just got one point. It could be useful for students to hear from past students, graduates, and their journey and what they maybe did throughout their degree to network and so on, and then what they did coming out of being a student and actually going into the workplace and how they found it. I think that'd be quite interesting to hear from as like a fresh perspective from someone who's been through the same journey that we're pretty much on at the minute.
Absolutely. So a little bit further on, so to say.
Yes, so someone who's more or less just come out of it and maybe a year into working outside of it.
Wonderful.
Does that make sense?
By the way, thank you for that, Abigail. Is there anybody on the call right now who is a couple of years in?
I am, yeah.
Oh, hi, Emily. You're just next to each other on the board anyways.
Yeah, I am. So I graduated in January last year from King's and have been working at a digital mental health care company called Thrive Mental Wellbeing. We have an app. And I kind of took it on. It was a real, it started off as a bit of an account management role, to be honest, and they were a really small company. And I went into it really being clear about the fact that I wanted to kind of shape it into a role that utilized what I'd learned in my master's, and I have been able to do that. So I'm a business psychologist now with them, and have just finished up with on an organizational research project, which was fantastic. But it at the same time, not necessarily getting the kind of development and learning that you might get if you were in a consultancy. So that's kind of where I am at the moment. I'm kind of almost 2 years into my role with them, and just coming back in thinking, okay, you know, how can I push myself a bit further and build some more skills? But I think what I found helpful was joining a smaller business where it gave me an opportunity to shape my role to how I wanted to do it. But, you know, that doesn't work for everyone.
Oh, that's understandable. And as far as this guidance from more Ox Psychs, this is why we created this whole mentoring shindig. So you can still sign up to it if you wish. And we can pair you up with a mentor who is a specialist in this area of occupational psychology, don't necessarily have the expertise on right now, but want to gain that. So still feel free to sign up in September.
That would be really helpful. I actually only came across this the other day when I saw Teresa from King's sharing the job at Aon that you posted, and I found it really, really helpful. So I'll definitely take that up for sure. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we meet every Friday. So it's always the same Zoom link. Plus we have this events as well every so often, such as the event on the 26th, and we're going to have more And we always post jobs as well on our psychologyatwork.blog LinkedIn page. So whatever junior jobs I see, whether it's HR admin, L&D admin, Oxide graduate role, I always try to post it on our LinkedIn page. So do check it out.
Thanks.
So good people, because we have spoke long enough, and I'm sure you would like to do another breakout room before we take out the drinks and the informal part can start. I'm just curious, what's the key takeaway for you from today? Like, what was useful? So if you can just type it in or unmute yourself, so we kind of understand what's useful about this event, so we can do more of what's useful.
I think for me, it was knowing that there are actually entry-level roles that exist. So that gave me some hope. So that was helpful.
Oh, absolutely. They are there. It's just the thing is that, let's say, the BPS website or the ABP website, the job boards charge for adverts. So for people to post their jobs on it. And as far as I'm aware, more people post on LinkedIn because of this. So this is why LinkedIn has become like the best job board in Oxide, ironically enough. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, get one, because I was blown away, because until we started Psych Talent a year ago, I only thought there were 1 or 2 Psych roles at any given time. Literally, because that's the only things we see on those official websites. And I was just thinking, oh my God. But I don't have the conscientiousness to start a website, to put jobs on it. So we just started a hashtag, because that's like within 5th percentile of conscientiousness. And like so many nice people are posting and tagging jobs every day. So right now we have a blog post, of Psych Talent. There's 3 graduate jobs on it, and somebody posted an additional 2. So just on one post, there's 5 graduate opportunities, which are open right now for an Psych.
It's really good.
I know, but most of them are in psychometrics though, because there's always money in psychometrics. Whether it's good or bad, it either means there's more money for development or more money for selection. So depending on the market, so they're pretty stable. More contacts, so please connect with each other. You can also download the chat with all the connections. Forthcoming events, networking, people's journeys, wonderful. And also so the networking was helpful. Wonderful. So considering networking was helpful, let's go to some breakout rooms. So
Nikita.
Yes.
Yes, please. Do you have an idea of is there a particular format, graduate scheme or intern, a format for CV? Is there a particular format graduate schemes or intern should look into, or formats or keywords recruiters look for in the CV?
I will say that they more look for you to reach out proactively rather than the CV. So just kind of reaching out and saying, look, can I talk to you about this? Because one of the things we try to do with Psych Talent is that people now send me roles from their companies to advertise. And I ask if they're okay to be contacted about these roles. So sometimes you'll see a Psych Talent application like Aon. So it mentions the name of the person whose team this is in, and she's happy to answer questions about this role. So I made sure to tag her in, and said, if anybody has any questions, please contact them. And this is what we try to do for entry-level roles. My advice would be contact them to have a chat about a role, because so few graduates do that. It actually separates you from the competition just by reaching out.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
But if anybody has any advice on CVs or cover letters, my main advice, don't start with, I'm passionate about psychology, because everybody does. And maybe you can say I'm psychological about passion. Maybe that will get their attention a little bit more.
I've got a quick question about psychometrics and whether there's many companies that sort of accept people as associates to sort of use occasionally rather than actually employ full time, and the best way to go around approaching companies to do that sort of thing.
Well, they would usually, for an associate, they look for 3 to 5 years of using psychometrics, that you already have this experience. And if you have this experience, absolutely, there's lots of associates. I just saw LHH advertised for an associate position for a person in assessment, and they're looking for 5 years experience.
Right, okay, that's worth knowing. Thank you very much.
That's all right. Drop me a line on LinkedIn and I'll send you the job ad, and happy to introduce you to Georgia who's looking.
I might
Brilliant.
just add
Thank
in
you.
there. Hi, my name's Claire. I work for Aon in the Dublin team, so I'm in Ireland. So I'm in psychometrics, so it's Aon Assessment Solutions, the same people that are hiring in the UK. We're actually hiring for 2 graduate roles in Ireland as well. But just on the associates thing, we often, because our team's very small, so if we don't have resources to deliver a full project, we'll reach out. I think it's just on LinkedIn that my manager puts the word out, and she asks us to like ask any Oxide friends if they need work, and it's usually just a couple of weeks at a time for a specific project, but it's a good way to get experience and just to see kind of the work that we do. And yeah, so just to make you aware that there are things out there, and especially now that it's because COVID, everything's remote. Even if you're in a different country, like people in the UK can obviously help out with our Irish projects now and stuff as well. So just wanted to let people know that those opportunities exist.
Thank you so much, Claire, for that. And if anybody has any questions about working at Aon, would you be happy to answer them?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So
I was actually just in the process of writing you a message, Claire, because I applied for it the other day. So any insights you can give would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
see, and it's wonderful as that. So you can reach out to people and they say, no problem, sure. Because we're a friendly bunch. And thank you so much, Claire, for that as well. So just reach out. And if you need any help, also feel free to reach out to me or the rest of the Psychology at Work team. And yeah, and on that note, we can stop the recording. Okay, excellent.